In order to get through the wilderness, you've got to look beyond the wilderness. In order to get through your toughest time, you've got to believe that there is a time that won't be as tough as your present time. In order to get where you're trying to go, in order to get to the promised land, you've got to go through the wilderness. And in order to get back through the promised land, you've got to go through being exiled. But when you are going through, you keep your focus on God. People who make it through the wilderness do so because they did not allow their circumstance to become their residence. They don't allow their location to distract them from their destination. Instead of partying and playing, they start studying and praying. Instead of slipping and sliding, they start trusting and abiding. And it is this dedication that gets them through. They keep their eyes on the prize. And that is a word for anyone here today who is struggling to get through this recession. Anybody who has been diagnosed with a condition that some might say is terminal. We all are terminal. We all have a terminal case. It's called life. And the doctors may say your life is 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years. They really don't know. This is a word for some mother who is worried about her son or daughter, or the son or daughter who is worried about the diminishing capabilities of a mother or father who forgets more than they remembers. This is a word for the seasoned saints who wake up every morning to Arthur, Bert, and Ben. Arthritis, bursitis, and Ben Gay. This is a word for the people of God in a challenging situation. Keep your eyes on God. You may be in the wilderness right now. You may be in exile right now, but keep your eyes on God. Do not grow weary in well-doing. Why? For in due season we shall reap a harvest if we do not give up. Now, it's important to understand because we're in a season and a lifestyle that we like instant gratification. But if you understand anything about reaping and sowing, you don't reap in the same season that you sow. So right now you may be sowing some tears, but in the end God will give you double for your trouble. I tell you, hold fast to dreams. Why? For when dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. You've got to hold fast and keep your eyes on the prize. Still, the challenge is to realize that once you get to the promised land, you got to do the same things to stay there that you did to get there. How many couples do we have here today? Anybody remember the courting process? Ladies, any of you remember knowing that you were going out with the guy that you kind of like, making sure you had your nails done? Making sure you spent the extra time paying the high cost of cute? You wanted your skin to be butter soft and smooth. You wanted your hands to be right. You wanted everything to be tight and right. Why? Because we're going out tonight. And I want my friends to know that I'm feeling right. Yeah, you were just ready. You were right because you were going to see your man. And brothers, you know how we do. We take a bath that day. Make sure we got some good cologne, not that stuff, the little stuff. We make sure we got the good stuff, the Carouse and all the other good cologne. Why? Because I'm going to see my lady. And I want her to see me in the best light. I want her to think that I'm all that and a bag of chips. I want her to want me. The same things you do to get her or him are the same things you need to keep her or him. And that same thing applies to worship and our relationship with God. The same things that we did to get into the building, we must do to stay in the building. The same 5:30 prayer times that you had to get where you're trying to go, you must maintain to stay where you have to go. The very things and ships that brought us where we are, we must use to sail us where God wants us to be. That becomes the challenge for all believers in this space and place today. You cannot just sit back and chillax and say, oh, you know, we here now. And in your own personal life, it's true just the same. You can't reach your highest heights and not do what it takes to continue to have heights that you need to reach. You cannot just become satisfied where you are. Now, I'm not saying you have to try to be other than where you are, because that is a prescription for failure. But what I am saying is recognizing that the same tools that you use to build your life to where it is now, you must continue to use those tools, because God is not through with you yet. No matter how high you are, God is not finished with you yet. God still has more that God wants to give you. God still has more that he wants to bless you with. There's still some people whose lives you need to touch, reach, and affect. So you cannot quit now. We've got to go all the way live. We can't just become satisfied. Well, I got what I want. I got mine. Now you got to get yours. No, we've got to understand that if my sister or my brother is still out there hungry, then I'm hungry. There's a part of me that is still in want and in need. As long as there's one person out of fellowship with God, as long as there's one person who is homeless, as long as there's one person who is locked up in drugs and in jail, as long as there's one person who does not know Jesus and the free pardon of their sins, then I've got work to do. All the way live. You know, if those who know me know I'm working with Live Big Ministries. God gave that through me because he wants, I believe God wants us to live big, to not get to settle for less than the best. God wants us to live in victory every day. Not just the days when we're in the wilderness and know God is all we need. God wants us to live in victory when he's blessed us with some stuff. Now, a victorious liver does three things. A victorious liver first loves God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength. You can't get anywhere else without that. The Bible teaches us that you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Upon these two hang all the law of all the prophets. If you just wanted to sum up the Bible, all 66 books, if you wanted to sum it up in just a simple, easy to digest pill, love the Lord your God, all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. All the law of it right there. If you love the Lord your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself, you're not going to steal. You're not going to kill. You're not going to do bad and evil things. You're not going to use and abuse people. Why? Because you love your neighbor like you love yourself. And even if you don't love yourself, if you love God, you'll learn to love yourself. Because some people say, well, that's an axiom for acting bad. I don't love myself. That's why I'm slapping you upside your head. Loving God teaches us to love ourselves. Why? Because God never stops loving us. Even though we've done some jacked up things, even though we've done things we hope our mothers and fathers never find out about, even though we have acted crazy, been lazy unnecessarily, God never stops loving us. And that means you're lovable. In fact, at your worst, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. You were worth dying for when you were at your worst. If you could really if we ever wrap our minds around that, how can you ever be depressed again? At your worst, Christ said, I'll die for you. At your worst, not at your best. Not when you cleaned yourself up, got everything together, got your mind and your body straight and worked out. Not when you're at our worst. Christ died for us. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. That's a victorious liver. A victorious liver also lifts others as they climb. A victorious liver realizes that if I make it to the promised land, but somebody else doesn't, then we have not fully made it to the promised land. I am because you are. And if we don't all get there, I've got work to do to make sure that I have paved the way that others may be able to follow the way that I have come. I'm not just going to get there for myself and cut off all ties with everybody else. I've got to lift others as I climb. So victorious livers love, victorious livers lift, and victorious livers labor in the vineyard for the Lord. It's going to take some work. We celebrate, then we consecrate, but finally we must operate. Somebody's hungry for the bread that only Christian Life Center can prepare. But if we lose focus, then somebody's going to go hungry. The harvest is ripe, but the laborers are few. So today I'm calling on some laborers. Today I'm calling for some warriors who are not afraid to fight the devil. Today I'm calling on some people who will say, live or die, my life belongs to God. I'm calling on some folks who say, I'm ready to go the extra level. I'm willing to go the extra mile. I'm not going to get satisfied just getting to the promised land. I want to be able to sustain myself in the promised land, and not just sustain myself, but to create a situation and an environment that others might also be able to be sustained. I'm not going to quit because there's work to do. Today we're looking for some people who will stand up and proclaim, for God I live, and if need be, for God I am willing to die. Today we're calling on some people to stand up with integrity, to be able to speak truth to power. Today we're calling on some people to commit. I wondered why, as I read Deuteronomy and Numbers and Joshua, why so many times when getting ready to go into the promised land and in attempting to prepare God's people for the promised land, God would tell the Israelites, be strong and courageous. Think about that. Because he's saying, when you get to the promised land, be strong and courageous. What does that tell us about the promised land? It tells us some things. If you're going to need to be strong and courageous in the promised land, it lets you know that the promised land might not be as easy as you thought it was going to be. It lets you know that the promised land might require some work on your behalf.